going to now, at this point, bring back in Dr. Dr. Bonsu. I'm going to ask, going to bring you back in. And of course, we're also going to bring in Professor Belal. Okay, just adding you into the mix and adding myself to the mix. Right. Perfect. So we have everyone. So thank you so much for the wide range of topics and very insightful. I've been looking at the comments from the chat box, and a lot of people have found all the present.
You're breaking up.
Dr. Bonsu and Dr. Onyeaka. We're going to explore how responsibility translates into action across organizations, industries, and education. So first, I'll move to Professor Belal. Professor Belal, Professor Farag, in his presentation, cautioned us about investors who call themselves responsible while practicing greenwashing. So, from your perspective, in sustainability accounting, how can companies move beyond the performative disclosure to genuine accountability?
Thank you. Remember, in my presentation, I used the word organization because companies are not the only organization in the world. There are private sector organizations, which are companies, but there are also public sector organizations. There are also third sector organizations. While I was talking about recalling for the implementation of the SDGs, I was not referring to the companies only. Yes, there is significant actor. And remember, in the previous framework of Millennium Development Goals, private sector was not involved. In the development of the Sustainable Development Goals, private sector was significantly involved. So the companies like Unilever played a significant role in the development of Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the issue with the greenwashing is that to prevent that happening, we need reliable account and multiplicity of account. What we are seeing at the moment is the accounts produced by the organizations, which so far remained voluntary and unverified. A large majority of them are not verified or was not put into any kind of independent verification to improve the reliability and the credibility of the information. In fact, that's the very thing I was teaching this morning in as part of a sustainability accounting module for our master's students. So to improve the reliability and the credibility of the information provided and avoid the greenwashing, what we are seeing is the rise of the mandatory regime, which is happening in the European Union. Now, as part of that mandatory regime, the verification of the information within those accounts have also been made compulsory. But who is going to do this massive task? There is also the issue of capacity building. And that capacity is not there at the moment, needs to be built. So by building that capacity, by producing reliable and accurate account and subjecting it to independent verification will help to improve the reliability and the credibility of the information contained within the account, and hence help avoid greenwashing. And we also need the capacity building not only inside the company, i.e. the corporate accountant. We also need the capacity at the media. We also need the capacity at the pressure groups at the NGO level who can look at the information and hold the companies to account for their social and environmental performance.
Thank you very much for that insightful feedback. I'm going to move to Dr. Bonsu. Dr. Bonsu, Professor Farag spoke about investors tying management behavior to net zero objectives. So, what leadership qualities do you believe are essential for executives to make sustainability more than just a checklist?
Sure. Thanks very much. So most of the times, what I think it normally lacks is when it comes to the purpose. Because usually you could see that we normally focus on the 3 Ps, people, planet, and profit, and the companies will be using their kind of corporate social responsibility as a benchmark. But then you could see that most of the times when it comes to CSR, it kind of lacks the impetus when it comes to addressing responsible businesses. Now, then it comes to the face of the moral commitment from the top executives when it comes to ensuring that all the 3 kind of Ps are kind of aligned within the context of their organizational kind of purpose. Because if you look into some of the corporate kind of reporting, you could see that there's kind of a lack of kind of policy coherence. So as I just made mention in my presentation, so you could see that most of the times policies are being kind of developed in kind of silo way of kind of thinking, as opposed to kind of thinking of it within the holistic kind of point of view. For instance, looking at it from the value chains or the supply chains. And then you'll be having a case whereby companies will be saying that, okay, we are doing good when it comes to, let's say, our emissions impact within the context of net zero. But then it's going to be only, let's say, the one that they have a direct kind of impact on it. So let's say for the scope 1. Then it comes to, so how do we address the ones within those kind of value chains? Let's say the scope 3, the upstream and then downstream one. So, and one other thing too is that when it looks into when it comes to the lack of frameworks, because how businesses can do some of these things is not out there at the moment. And then you could be seeing that people are just going to be adapting it based on what other people are doing, as opposed to having their own kind of strategy when it comes to their business activities, right from the extraction phase to the recycling phase when it comes to the production or for the manufacturing. So I think the main thing is kind of the purpose and shaping those kind of corporate sustainability strategies to fit into the when it comes to the 3 Ps.
Thank you. That was a fresh perspective on the 3 Ps. And I'm now going to move to Dr. Onyeaka. We're talking about on translating responsibility into practice. Dr. Onyeaka, you operate at the intersection of industry and academia, and how can technical professionals and scientists be empowered to act responsibly, even when organization culture or resources are limited?
Okay. Could you repeat the question again?
Yes. So I said you operate at the intersection of industry and academia. And so the question is, how can technical professionals and scientists be empowered to act responsibly, even when organizational culture or resources are limited?
All right. One thing I really advocate for is capacity building. So when capacity building, it's all about how sustainability becomes part of our professional DNA. For example, in the food systems, like I'm working in food, not a side project. So for example, we teach through practice, like HACCP, hazard analysis, critical control points. Or if you're designing a system, how can you design something hygienically or cleaning in practice? They are trained alongside with water, energy, and waste KPIs. So if, for example, a line trials meets microbial safety targets and you can cut the cleaning practice by water by 30%, this can then reduce the impact. So success is assured, you have credentials and it's celebrated. So we can also embed this in assessments. For example, students and staff can justify process, choices with LCA style trade-off. Okay. We can look at incentives. We can align incentives in CPDs or promotion points for cold chain efficiency or yield improving fermentation control. Look at food loss reduction, byproduct viralization. There's so many ways we can embed that. So we can also think about things like building communities of practice, engineers, procurement, nutrition, where peers expect regenerative resourcing and stuff like that. So the way I see it is teach it, you can assess it, and you can reward it. We can put all this practice together, and this makes the win visible. So in the food system, how sustainability stops operational and becomes as a core identity is when we're looking at general manufacturing practices and also food safety. So what I'm trying to say, is at the end of the day is capacity building, big sustainability very, very well if it's integrated into food systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So because of our time, we'll take one round of questions for each speaker. So Professor Belal, I'm going to come back to you. If you could ask corporate leaders one reflective question before they publish their next sustainability reports, what would it be?
Sorry,
Professor Belal, are you still on the call? Yeah.
Muted, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, one thing that I would like to invite the corporate leader is this, and this is coming from the research that I've been doing on this SDG project, part of which I've shared with you, is the organizations providing a lip service to this whole business of SDG implementation and accounting thereof. And so my urge to the organizational leaders will be, if they are going to refer to the SDG framework, the SDG framework does provide a structure. Give us an account according to that structure. They're far from it at the moment, because they're making random references in the corporate narratives to SDG 5C, but we can't see the performance against individual targets and the indicators. So if we are going to claim or refer to the SDGs, then I would like to see, I mean, this is completely missing. No matter which country we looked at 5 countries, the scenario is the same. Companies and the organizations are making random reference to the various SDGs, which is far from helpful. And this is where the greenwashing claim you earlier referred to is coming from.
I agree. Now I'm going to move to Dr. Bonsu. Just one round of question is, if you could give one challenge to the young professionals listed today, because we have lots of them, one habit to cultivate for responsible leadership. If they have to cultivate one habit for responsible leadership, what will it be?
Yes, so what I'll say is that when it comes to responsible leadership, it is everyone's business, irrespective of being it a business or an individual. So now, for instance, when it comes to you being an individual and thinking about the way you consume and dispose, let's say, materials, so you can make a meaningful impact in that kind of regards. Now, so if you being a leader within an organization, then for that one too, and as I said, when it comes to the purpose and looking at it from the angle of, let's say, from the sustainable development angles, picking it up from the organizational, operational kind of point of view. So you look at your activities, looking at, let's say, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm going to put a positively kind of impact on. Then you think about the negative impact that your operations also affect. Then the things that you have control over. So in this case, you could see that you could be starting, for instance, when it comes to one SDG that you are much more familiar with based on your operations. But you could see that once you are working on that, you could be addressing other interrelated SDGs. And that's where, and then it comes to kind of collaboration and engagement as well. Because I think it's achieving some of these kind of sustainable kind of development goals. You need collaboration with your partners, or when it comes to your stakeholders or kind of actors. And I think that is where the synergies and the trade-offs could come to kind of into full play. Because if your organization is much more into profit, then the question is, within your stakeholders kind of pool, those who are much more interested in the environment and those who are much more interested about, let's say, the planet, where could be the trade-offs and synergies in regards to that? So I think you need to work with people in regards to whatever leadership objectives that you have for yourself.
Very profound. Collaboration, I think that's one of the things that all speakers or presenters have been talking about today, is to collaborate, especially even between the global south and the global north. Question for Dr. Helen. So imagine we're designing a training module for the next generation of industry innovators, what's the one principle you would insist every participant learns about ethical and sustainable practice?
So one of the key principles I think is quite important, no matter what you do, it's transparency, okay? So transparency is key. I believe that if you want to do any kind of work, no matter what it is, and you're involving, for example, people, planet, like I mentioned earlier, they need to know what it is. And it needs to be spoken in a language that people can identify with. And, it needs to be equitable. You need to consider, who and you're working with. But the very important thing that I've learned through my role as a deputy director here, it's co-creation. Whatever solution or whatever you want to do, it's got to be co-created. So you do not, okay, for example, we're talking about orphan crops, indigenous knowledge. You're not going to tell the indigenous people what to do. You work with them, for example. I'm just giving an example, to co-create solutions that they will adopt, but it's got to be done in a collaborative way. We're talking about collaboration. So those are the kind of things I like to, finish with, please. Okay, while we're waiting for you to come back on, I just wanted to say something else. As a deputy director at BISCA, we broker collaborations, because it's very important that we co-create solutions that can address climate change. And what we're trying to do is to secure funding and support transitioning as well, So you have pilots, you have evaluations, and then policy briefs. So that's how it works, okay? And Adenika, are you back on now?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, can hear you.
Oh,
Okay.
perfect. Sorry about that.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah. So you're talking about BISCAR. Do you want to finish the?
No, I was just saying, just giving an example using BISCA, because here with broker collaboration is what is quite important. And what we do is we tend sometimes to have funding, pilots funding or capacity building funding, and support also transition, So from pilots to evaluation to policy briefs. And we just presented one yesterday. I was just rounding up while I was waiting for you, rambling.
Thank you. Thank you so
No
much.
problem.
Thank you so much, Professor Belal, Dr. Bonsu, and Dr. Onyeaka, for the insightful discussion. And today, each of you has actually reminded us in your own words that responsibility is not a slogan. It is a practice that demands courage, that demands transparency, and of course, conviction. And Professor Belal, you captured it powerfully when you said that true accountability begins where voluntary disclosure ends. And this reminds us that numbers alone cannot carry moral weight unless they are backed by integrity. Also, Dr. Bonsu, your words struck a chord when you said that leadership in sustainability means standing firm on principle, even when profit tells you otherwise. And that reminder challenged every decision maker here to reflect on values before strategies. And Dr. Onyeaka, your emphasis that education is the bridge between not knowing and doing. So not just talking about the doing, the knowledge part of it, but translating that into action. And this beautifully connects today's dialogue to the act of sustainable transformation. That is the nurturing of human capacity and conscience. And together, Professor Belal, Dr. Bonsu, and Dr. Onyeaka, your voices are shown to us today that sustainability is not merely an environmental or economic concern. It is profoundly ethical, it is social, and of course, more importantly, it is human. And on behalf of the Green Institute, on behalf of BISCAR, ITER, the University of Birmingham, and all our participants, we sincerely thank you for reminding us that when responsibility meets action, progress becomes possible. And thank you for your time, your wisdom, and your leadership. And we hope to keep engaging with you in the future beyond this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much.